Hello everyone, I'm the storyteller, and I'm here to guide you into a peaceful rest tonight. I know many of you use these videos to help you unwind and drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, it really helps. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Get cozy, settle in, and let's journey into tonight's story. Relax, and let the soothing sounds carry you away. In a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and whispering pines, there was a tale older than the oldest oak, a story about the Starlight Grove, a hidden glen where dreams took shape as shimmering wisps of light. It was said that the Dreamkeeper, a mysterious figure woven from moonlight and shadow, tended to these dreams, singing a lullaby so ancient it could soothe even the fiercest storms of the heart. But no one in the village had seen the grove in generations, and many dismissed it as a fable, until the night Lila, a curious girl with a head full of stories and a heart full of courage, decided to find it. Lila had always been different. While other children played tag in the meadows, she wandered the forest edges, collecting fallen feathers and stones that hummed faintly when held to her ear. Her grandmother had once told her the secret of the Starlight Grove: follow the fireflies when the moon is at its peak, she'd whispered, her voice trembling with age and wonder. But beware the shadow wraiths, they feed on forgotten dreams. Lila didn't fully understand, but when nightmares began plaguing the village, twisting sleep into something sour and fearful, she knew she had to try. One midnight, when the air smelled of jasmine and possibility, Lila slipped from her bed, a lantern in hand, and tiptoed past the snoring blacksmith's house toward the woods. The fireflies appeared as promised, darting ahead like tiny guides. Their golden light led her deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the shadows thicker. Branches clawed at her cloak, and the wind hissed warnings, but Lila pressed on, humming her grandmother's lullaby to steady her nerves. At last, the trees parted, revealing the Starlight Grove. It was more beautiful than any story. The ground glowed with bioluminescent flowers, their petals pulsating like heartbeats. Above, the sky stretched clear and endless, stars dangling so low Lila felt she could pluck them like berries. And there, in the center of the grove, stood a figure, tall, translucent, and glowing faintly blue. The Dreamkeeper. Their face was neither old nor young, shifting like smoke, but their eyes held galaxies. "You've come," they said, their voice a chorus of rustling leaves and distant chimes. "The lullaby, it falters. The wraiths grow bold." They gestured to the grove, and Lila gasped. Patches of flowers had wilted, their light dimmed, and dark, shapeless creatures slithered at the edges, their forms flickering like static. The Dreamkeeper explained, their lullaby was the grove's lifeblood, a melody spun from starlight and memory. But as people stopped believing in dreams, the song weakened. Now, the wraiths threatened to consume the grove, and without it, nightmares would devour the world. "You must learn the song," the Dreamkeeper said, pressing a hand to Lila's chest. "Your heart remembers it. Listen." At first, Lila heard nothing. Then, faintly, a tune rose, her grandmother's lullaby, but deeper, richer, as if 1,000 voices sang alongside it. The Dreamkeeper nodded. "Sing it. Revive the grove. But hurry. The wraiths will not wait." As Lila sang, her voice trembling at first, the flowers brightened. The wraiths recoiled, hissing. But the song was long, complex, and the shadows regrouped, lunging for her. Panic tightened her throat, until she remembered her grandmother's words: "The lullaby isn't just sound, child. It's what you pour into it." Lila closed her eyes, pouring every hope, every cherished memory into the melody: her mother's laughter, the smell of rain on soil, the warmth of her first sunrise. The grove erupted in light. Flowers bloomed anew, their colors dazzling. The wraiths shrieked, dissolving into smoke. The Dreamkeeper smiled, their forms solidifying. "You've done it," they murmured. "The song is safe, for now." But Lila frowned. What if people forget again? The Dreamkeeper placed a vial in her palm, a tiny constellation swirling inside. A fragment of the grove's starlight. Share it. Remind them dreams matter. Returning home, Lila feared she'd be scolded. Instead, she found the village awake, clutching candles, their faces pale but hopeful. The nightmares stopped, someone breathed. When Lila showed them the starlight, spilling tales of the grove, they listened. Slowly, belief, and sweet dreams, returned. Years later, Lila became the village's storyteller, her hair silver as the starlight she guarded. Children gathered, wide-eyed, as she sang the lullaby, now woven with new verses of courage and shadows vanquished. And deep in the woods, the Dreamkeeper tended the grove, their song strong once more, knowing that somewhere, a curious heart always kept the light alive. The village thrived under Lila's care, its nights filled with the soft glow of shared starlight and the hum of the Dreamkeeper's lullaby. But as seasons turned, Lila noticed something unsettling. The vial of starlight she carried began to dim. At first, it was subtle, like a star veiled by clouds, but soon, cracks spiderwebbed across its glass. When she sang the lullaby, the notes felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted the melody. Whispers returned to the village, too, stories of children waking with cold sweats, of elders murmuring about shadowy figures lingering at the edges of their vision. Lila knew the grove was in peril once more, but this time, the threat felt deeper, older, as though the earth itself had begun to forget. One frost-kissed evening, a stranger arrived. Her cloak was stitched with constellations, and her eyes gleamed like polished obsidian. She called herself Naira, a wanderer who'd crossed deserts and mountains, seeking the source of the world's fading dreams. The villagers were wary, but Lila sensed a kinship. Naira's hands trembled when she touched the cracked vial, and her voice softened when she spoke of the tear in the sky above the grove. The Dreamkeeper's song isn't just a melody, Naira explained, kneeling by Lila's hearth. It's a thread holding the veil between dreams and the void. Something has pulled that thread taut. If it snaps, she didn't finish, but the silence that followed was louder than any warning. Together, they ventured back to the Starlight Grove, this time under a blood-red moon. The forest felt different, older, angrier. Trees leaned inward as if to block their path, and the fireflies that once guided Lila now sparked erratically, their light tinged with crimson. When they reached the grove, Lila's breath caught. The bioluminescent flowers had turned to ice, their petals frozen mid-tremble, and the Dreamkeeper knelt in the center, their form fractured like cracked glass. Above them, the sky yawned open, a jagged rift where no stars shone, only an endless, hungry dark. The lullaby, it wasn't enough, the Dreamkeeper rasped, their voice splintering. The void, it remembers what we've forgotten. Naira stepped forward, her face grim. The first dream, she said. Every legend begins with one. If the void consumes it, the grove, and every dream that followed, will unravel. Lila's mind raced. Her grandmother's stories had never mentioned a first dream, but Naira pulled a tattered scroll from her cloak, its edges singed. Before time, there was a dreamer, she read. Their hope became the first spark, their sorrow the first shadow. The Dreamkeeper was born of both, tasked with balancing the light and the dark. But the void, it is the absence that remains. It wants to unmake the balance. The ground quaked. From the rift, inky tendrils seeped, solidifying into figures, shadow wraiths, but larger, their forms crowned with jagged antlers of smoke. They moved toward the Dreamkeeper, clawed hands outstretched. The lullaby must be sung at the rift, Naira urged, but it needs the first dream's essence. You have to find it, inside the grove's memory. How? Lila shouted over the groaning wind. The Dreamkeeper lifted a trembling hand, and a single glowing root erupted from the soil, splitting open to reveal a pool of liquid starlight. Dive, they whispered. But be swift. The void twists what it touches. Without hesitation, Lila plunged into the pool. Instead of water, she fell through layers of time, a kaleidoscope of moments. She saw the first Dreamkeeper, a being of radiant light and swirling storms, planting the grove seeds with a tear and a laugh. She saw ancient villagers gathering starlight in clay pots, their faces bright with wonder. And then, deeper still, she saw the first dreamer, a child, curled in a cave beneath a starless sky, whispering stories to ward off the cold. Their dream was simple, aching, "I want to feel safe." But as Lila reached for it, the memory warped. The child's face darkened, their dream fraying into tendrils of fear. The void had been here, poisoning the root of all dreams. Lila grasped the fading spark, clutching it to her chest. "You're not alone," she whispered, pouring her own memories into the child's dream, her village's laughter, the warmth of shared stories, the Dreamkeeper's song. The spark flared, bright and defiant. When Lila resurfaced, the grove was nearly consumed. Naira battled wraiths with a blade forged from starlight, and the Dreamkeeper's form had faded to a wisp. Above, the rift pulsed, its edges spreading. "Now, Lila!" Naira cried. Clutching the first dream spark, Lila sang. This time, the lullaby was different, raw, primal. The wraith shrieked as the spark in her hands bloomed into a beam of light, spearing the rift. The void recoiled, but Lila could feel it resisting, pulling at her voice, her will. It whispered of futility, of dreams forgotten and hope rotted to dust. Then, a new sound joined hers, a low, resonant hum. The villagers, led by children clutching tiny vials of starlight, stepped into the grove, their voices weaving with Lila's. The Dreamkeeper rose, their form mending as the collective song swelled. The rift shuddered, then snapped closed with a thunderclap. In the silence that followed, the grove began to heal. Flowers thawed, their light returning, and the sky glittered with newborn stars. The Dreamkeeper, whole again, bowed to Lila and Naira. The void retreats, but never disappears. It is the shadow to the dream. Naira nodded. "Which is why," she said, turning to Lila, "the world needs more guardians. The grove isn't the only one." She gestured to the horizon, where distant lights flickered, other groves, other Dreamkeepers, other voids to balance. Lila understood. She kissed her grandmother's pendant, now fused with the repaired veil of starlight, and handed it to a young girl in the crowd, a child who'd sung louder than anyone. "Protect it," Lila said. "And remember, stories are starlight-made sound." As Naira and Lila set out at dawn, the villagers sang the lullaby, its verses now threaded with tales of rifts and resilience. Behind them, the Dreamkeeper tended their grove, but their song carried farther now, weaving with others across the world. And in the void silence, a new truth stirred: as long as one dreamer dared to remember, the light would always find a way.